is the language of traffic exchange, dialogue, and debate. Is the language of the symphony orchestra and jazz ensemble. Couldn't you think of another word than pluralism? The question came to me at a public forum in Louisville from a woman active in the local Interfaith Council. She explained, around here, pluralism has a bad name. What she meant as we discussed the matter is the common critique that pluralism means the chaos of anything goes. It means unprincipled relativism and therefore moral faith. It means giving up one's own, usually Christian, truth in favor of unconvincing religious correctness. I am not ready to give up on the term pluralism, as unpacking its meaning, especially with skeptics, steers us into some of the most important issues of our time. Pluralism is not an ideology, not a leftist scheme, not a free-form relativism. Rather, pluralism is a dynamic process through which we engage with one another and through our very deepest differences. First, pluralism is not just another word for diversity. It goes beyond mere plurality or diversity to active engagement with that plurality. Religious diversity is an observable fact in American life today. But without any real engagement with one another, neighboring churches, temples, and mosques might prove to be just a striking example of diversity. One can study this diversity, complain about there being too much diversity, or even celebrate diversity. But the diversity alone is not pluralism. Pluralism is not given, but must be created. Pluralism requires participation and attunement to life and energies of one another. Second, pluralism goes beyond mere tolerance, the active attempt to understand the other, like the step taken by Milwaukee's Christians and Muslims when they signed that covenant, pledging themselves to the process of mutual understanding. Although tolerance is no doubt a step forward from intolerance, it does not require new neighbors to know anything about one another. Tolerance alone is little to bridge chasms of stereotype and fear that may, in fact, dominate the mutual image of the other on a street like New Hampshire Avenue outside our nation's capital. It is far too fragile a foundation for a society that is becoming as religiously complex as ours. Vigorous engagement, even argument around the common table, is vital to a democratic society. It is vital also to help religious faith, so that we appropriate our faith, not by habit or heritage alone, but by making it our own within the context of dialogue with people of other faiths. Such dialogue is aimed not at achieving agreement, but at achieving relationship. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Spina, longtime friend, attender, member, general good guy. Pretty much knows what he's doing when he's playing poker. He's a senior lecturer in the Philosophy and Religious Studies department here at UWC. And for 14 years, the last 2 years, I believe, he's led a group of students to Philadelphia where they attempt to encounter diverse religious traditions and participate with interfaith agencies addressing urban problems. Steve Spina. I think he'll introduce his other participants.
Thanks, Dave. It's good to be back and see a lot of familiar faces. Not as involved as I used to be, but this has been a spiritual home as much as any other place. I'm not going to take too long, so I want to turn it over to the students, but I want to introduce this just very briefly. From 9/11, the recent Boston Marathon, almost 12 years later, we have seen an exponential rise in religious fundamentalism, hostility, violence, prejudice, divisiveness, hate speech, both in the name of religion and sometimes in the name of freedom from religion. It seems that we ignore our growing religious diversity immediately around us every day, to our own peril. So in March of 2011, President Obama established what is called the President's Interfaith Cooperation and Community Service Campus Challenge. They can't come up with any shorter names from Washington, I guess. to which over 400 schools responded in the first year. The premise was that historically, college-age youth have regularly been on the forefront of significant social change movements like the civil rights. Martin Luther King was in his early 20s. And the goal, then, of this particular challenge was to make interfaith cooperation a social norm, that universities participate in facilitating that process, and to make interfaith leader a new identity category. About the same time, I was becoming familiar with a man named Eboo Patel, charismatic activist, a leader, Muslim, Oxford-trained sociologist of religion, who established an organization out of Chicago called the Interfaith Youth Core, which exists to inspire and train college students and college campuses to fulfill the President's Challenge through what they call Better Together campaigns, and to which we have sent a number of students, about a dozen students, to Interfaith Leadership Institutes. There was just on April 29th, most recent essay article from the Chronicle of Higher Education. Eboo Patel has a dream through his Interfaith Youth Core. He wants to make religious understanding the keystone of the college experience. So in June of 2011, I applied and was approved for a 3-year project, what the university calls a domestic intercultural immersion project, involving a course and a spring break experience in Philly called Engaging Religious Pluralism in Urban Service. We've now completed our second of 3 years, having taken 46 students last year and 44 students this year in a bus all the way to Philadelphia. For the last 2 spring breaks, we stopped in Chicago on the way there and had it last year morning, this year an afternoon of training from the IFYC staff. And once in Philly, we encountered 8 or 9 diverse religious communities and traditions, as well as a number of several interfaith agencies cooperating across religious identities on particular issues of service and justice in the urban area. So this spring, during March 15th through the 23rd, we participated in African Methodist Episcopal, Quaker, Sikh, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, and this year it was Sufi Muslim, and Baha'i traditions. I'm also pleased that we were able to have some real interesting, challenging hands-on experience, learning about the problems of immigration and the immigrant communities in Philly. We protested illegal gun sales, packaged food, cleaned and abandoned urban lot, sought petition signatures for jobs and fair wages for airport workers. And maybe not least of all, we established, again, for the second year in a row, a wonderful, strong sense of family and community with each other. And this year, we were fortunate to have this community being developed among our own group of 44 students representing Christian, atheist, agnostic, seeker, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist traditions. And we had more diversity than to process this year. I'm very happy and very proud to have been part of this experience, to participate with these students in helping the world become a better place and becoming bigger humans, and to help each of us in the process of transforming our own lives. So 5 of them have come this morning to share a bit of their own stories. And Linda Carlson, who's the coordinator for the English as Second Language program, joined me this year in the trip because I'm getting way too old to not sleep for 9 days by myself. She will be one of your own. She'll be wrapping it up. So I'm happy to have them come and share their stories in service of our world's crucial need to learn how to live better together. Nick Koerner, I'm just going to get this right, Emily Christoph, Sherry Yang, Hema, Preya, and Sheikh Jammeh will be speaking before Linda wraps it up. Thank you very much for the invitation to have us here this morning.
Hello, my name is Nick Koerner, and my story starts, like any good story should, with dinosaurs. When I was young, I loved dinosaurs and I read endlessly about them. Incidentally, this taught me a story about the history of the world and the organisms on it. My mother encouraged my studies because she wanted me to feel comfortable with learning and self-expression, traits I would keep with me to this very day. This got me on the path to thinking rationally about the world which has been an invaluable skill throughout my life. It is fair to say from a young age, I obsessed with logic and evidence, so I've always struggled with religion. I don't have faith naturally, so even as a young child, I could not completely accept Christianity as I was taught, and I think that that was a good thing for me. When I was growing up, I learned firsthand the realities of poverty, racism, bullies, and violence. Those experiences gradually disabused me of my childish notions about the world. I understood that the world was not fair, that justice and fairness were often merely words reserved for a select few. I learned that the only person I could rely upon was myself. But what I could not figure out where God and faith fit into that picture. So falling into atheism was easy enough for me because atheism made sense. But my questions about the world and my place in it continued. When I was 14, I encountered the single most important book in my life, and that was Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Existentialism was the perfect philosophy for me, and I took to it naturally. While I didn't agree with everything Nietzsche said, I did agree with choosing my own morality and taking responsibility for my own destiny. Nietzsche made me stop and think about my own beliefs and behaviors, so I naturally wanted to create my own ethics, something that would make sense to me that wasn't just based on religion. That set me on the direction of studying various world philosophies and religions in order to learn more about ethics and how to make the world a better place. To that end, I continue to question everything I encounter and everything I believe in, so I am always studying new ideas about how to order and live correctly. That is why I engaged in this project of religious pluralism. I care deeply about justice and making the world a better place. I found that there was something to learn from all the world's religions and great philosophers. No religion has a monopoly on the truth, and all of them have something to teach for those willing to learn. In Plato's Republic, a character named Polemachus suggests that justice is basically being nice to your friends and family or your own group and doing harm to your enemies. Polemachus argues that humans are natural partisans and natural sectarians, and that justice is acting like a good partisan. Socrates does not agree with that definition of justice, and nor do I. For so long, though, this has been true about humanity. We all do it, let's face it. But that does not make it right. When we went on the trip to Philadelphia, we met people from various religions and backgrounds, and separately, they're all nice and good people. We also met interfaith organizations that try to take all those separate good peoples and combine them and their goodness to work on a project for the benefit of everyone. These were people who changed their definition of group identity. They were no longer acting only as Sikhs, no longer thinking only of their fellow Muslims, no longer only helping their fellow Christians. They had redefined themselves to include those who would normally be excluded. As Unitarian Universalists, this idea is probably second nature to most of you, I would imagine. But it's not for all people. There are a lot of people who are perfectly fine with Polemachus' partisan justice. Some are even worse, and they only care about themselves. On one of the days on the trip, we walked around trying to get people to sign a petition to ensure fair labor practices at the Philadelphia airport. Most of the people walked by and said, "I'm too busy, I'm in a hurry, or I'm late for something." What that means is that they didn't have time to think about anyone else but themselves. Partisan and egocentric justice will not work in the future. Our problems are too big, and we are inescapably bound to each other. We can't escape each other's problems or each other. We have to work together, whether we like it or not. Like John Donne said so long ago, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, part of the main. It is a challenge of our generation to redefine ourselves in such a way that we include the entirety of mankind. This involves moving past toleration to pluralism, where we are comfortable with engaging our differences and acting together. We must do this. If we can become religious pluralists and learn from each other, we can all learn to be better people. We can remake ourselves and the world. We have a challenge today, right here, in this moment, and when we leave this place and go back to the world, to transcend the partisan and the egocentric for the universal and the inclusive. Thank you.
Christoph, and I'm a freshman at UWBC. I was raised by my mother, who had a background in Methodist, and my dad, who had a background in Catholic. And I was never baptized because I was raised as a Lutheran. I attended Sunday school and an after-school program that had to do with religion, but I really didn't have a very big interest at this point. So I stopped going to Sunday school and I finished up the after-school program and didn't return. And I didn't really think about religion too much until I moved to a new school where it was mostly a Catholic community, and I felt weird not being like them. I didn't feel like I fit in because suddenly everybody was really involved in after-school programs and religion programs, and they're all getting confirmed, and I didn't have this experience. And so by the time I came to be 16, I decided that I wanted to attend a church. So my mother took me to a Lutheran church that she had attended a few times. And the sermon was about something that I didn't really agree with Christianity. And the following week, my cousin committed suicide, and suddenly my grandma and my cousin were starting to question their own faith. And they were accusing God, saying that God had killed my cousin. But I couldn't believe that, because from what I'd learned as a child, that God was supposed to be an all-loving being. He would never do that to somebody. So I lost my faith a little bit because I didn't really know. I had a lot of questions, but I kept a lot of these questions to myself. And it wasn't until college when I suddenly was faced with more diversity that I started more to think about what I believed in and why I was questioning things. So I got involved in the Rouse 100 class, which taught about world religions, which was my first real experience with learning about different religions that weren't really Christianity. And I decided that I would fit more into the label of agnostic because I didn't quite know what I believed yet. And I started opening up. This trip to Philly was a really good experience for me because I learned a lot about different religions and different people, and I learned how to work with them. And through that, I became more of myself. I wasn't afraid to be a person with questions. Instead, I was open, and I learned that it's okay to question things because it's still time to figure it all out. And I learned that service is a lot of important. I've always been involved in volunteer work, but it is more important, I thought, when we were working with people who are different from us because we learn a lot more and we get a lot more done. So I have a better appreciation of other religions through this trip as well as service. And I think that if we all work together, we're going to learn more about ourselves and more about others. And if we can accept others, we're going to make a bigger impact. Thank you.
I'm Sherry. Mom, when you think of that word, parent, what do you think of? Where I was from, no one really knew what mom was. I grew up in the same town my entire life, and I guess you can consider it as your typical small conservative town. Coming from a small town, I guess you could say there was not much diversity in religion or ethnicity. But it didn't bother me as a child because everyone was your friend. I thought I was like everyone else. I didn't see the differences between my friends and I, but I was first confronted with being different at the age of 7. One of my best friends, she was throwing a birthday party and everyone was invited besides me. And I was hopeful, thinking that she wouldn't purposely forget about her friend. And so I waited and waited for an invitation. I never got one. A couple of days later, she came up to me and she told me the reason why she didn't invite me. She said that because another classmate's parent told her parents that my mom couldn't speak English. And so when I heard that, I was shocked and disappointed. I responded back saying that my mom can speak English and whoever said that was wrong. From then on, I started feeling ashamed of who I was, feeling ashamed of my culture and my ethnicity. And so whenever people asked me about who I was and what my culture was about, I would give them short, vague answers. I soon felt this way with my religion also. My religion is Hmong shamanism. My friends would ask me questions about why I did the things I did and why it was significant for my religion. I tried my best to answer them, but my response to them was getting weird glances or weird expressions. After telling them I felt dumb and I didn't understand why my religion, I didn't understand why they didn't understand my religion. And so I just gave up trying to give short, vague answers about my religion. After a while, I tried my best to fit in and blend in with everybody. I hated being different, and I wanted to be just like everyone else. The consequences of trying to blend in was that I was starting to forget my language, my culture, and my religion. But at that time, I thought it was fine. I didn't think that those things played a part in my life. College changed everything for me. I got the opportunity to meet other Hmong students and learn and engage with religious and non-religious faith backgrounds. I saw how some students were really passionate about their religion and their ethnicity, and it made me start to regret my decision of trying to blend in with everybody. Learning different religions made me see the similarities each religion has from one another. It may not be the customs or the practices that we practice, but they all emphasize on being a good person. Be a good person. That was what my mom taught me also. It doesn't matter how religious or non-religious individual is, they're all trying to be a good person. During my spring break of 2012 and 2013, I got to really bond and form strong relationships with people of different backgrounds, and we worked together to give back to the community. We set our differences aside and focused on one similarity, and that was helping the community. Engaging, learning, and observing different religions have helped me appreciate my own religion and made me have a stronger bond with my identity. Interfaith has opened my eyes and allowed me to see what I couldn't see before. I was selfish and I cared for myself only. But now I see and have experienced how much learning a different religion has impacted me. I want to teach my own religion and keep learning about different religious and non-religious backgrounds as well. Interfaith not only made me want to learn about other religions, but made me want to know more about my own. I hope that hearing my story makes you see how important interfaith is. I know that there are people who are out there that have felt and experienced the feelings that I have with my own religion. Being a minority, you experience the struggle of being ashamed and embarrassed of your ethnicity or religion. But I want to tell you that others who are feeling the same way that I was was that I shouldn't be ashamed of their ethnicity or religion. It makes them unique and they should share it with the world. Appreciate who you are. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Hema, Preya, and my name comes from Sanskrit. My great-grandparents were Tamil immigrants from Sri Lanka who came to Malaysia for a better life. So I was born on the 19th of October 1992 in Malaysia. I am a Hindu. I never formally learned religion, that of mine or those of others, but it has always been a part of my life. I learned my own faith through my family. They taught me through symbolism and stories. When they introduced the Hindu deities, that they themselves represented something greater than us. And through our rituals of burning incense and lighting camphor and placing your hands together in prayer like this. And there were other ways to pray too. You would say mantras or sing devotional songs or meditate. And I grew up with beliefs that there is one God and that there is a divine presence within us all. And people connect to God in different ways, and they call it different names, and sometimes they don't call it anything at all. And my mom always reminded me that there is value and truth in all religions. And when things get complicated with religious dogma, just remember your values and to be a good human being. While I grew up like this, rich in my own tradition, there were others growing up with their own distinctive influences, and their influences became a part of mine. Because I was surrounded by diversity all my life. Diversity in terms of race, language, culture, and religion. Malaysia is considered an Islamic country where Muslims make up the majority, but I was surrounded by people of different backgrounds, non-denominational Christians, Protestants, Catholics, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, and Sikhs. And I had friends telling me that they didn't know if there was a God, or some believed that there is no God. And if we had to label them today, we would call them agnostics and atheists. I didn't have to look too far for these people because they were my neighbors, the school bus driver, my teachers, and my best friends whom I grew up with. And we were accustomed to accommodate through the simplest things, by ordering a chicken pizza instead of a beef pepperoni in a halal restaurant, just so that the Muslim and the Hindu could eat together. Or not scheduling hangouts on Sundays because my Christian friends had church activities going on, and we didn't have to be told. It was not only about being exposed to the practices of others, but also learning to understand and respect the differences. And my upbringing gave me experiences that made interfaith a part of my story without me even realizing it. But this isn't to say that there were no biases, prejudices, or discrimination. There was a lot of those. And sometimes we learned the hard way. A little example was, as a kid, I used to be made fun of for this little black dot on my forehead, which is called a bindi. But funnily enough, I continued to use my bindi all my life, and I only stopped a couple of months ago when I came to the United States. Now I've been here for almost 9 months, and there isn't a day that goes by when I'm not reminded of how different I am. I am aware of my skin color, my accent, my beliefs, and my background, and I struggle with the conflict of wanting to be invisible while I'm so visibly different. But through my internal struggles, I'm also becoming more aware that we aren't all that different as we sometimes seem to be. And I felt this the strongest over spring break during our interfaith immersion trip, where we would be immersed in a completely different world for a few hours each day, and then we come back and got to talk about it. And these conversations about the things that we felt, said, and did, to me defined my experience. And it allowed me to connect to others in a way that reminded me so much of my relationships back home, where there was an underlying understanding that each of us are the way we are because of our own unique influences and upbringing, where the lines of religious and non-religious identifications do not fade away or matter less, but they become a reason for us to connect, where we could engage with one another without changing one another's commitments. And it felt familiar. The vision of interfaith dialogue, interfaith cooperation, and religious pluralism may sound like abstract concepts and rigid social practices, but it isn't. They flowed naturally for me, like it was the way things ought to be. And I believe that when you open yourself up to this, you would make that connection too. Because the common values of compassion and forgiveness, the universal need for love and acceptance, and the hope that we share and hold for a better tomorrow are all part of a common bond that ties us all together, simply because we are human beings first and foremost. I learned that it's not so much about the specifics of your beliefs, but rather how you live and how you act. And this comes down simply to how you treat the person right next to you, the friend or the foe, the one closest to you or the distant stranger. And I want to leave you all with a Hindu proverb. There are hundreds of paths up the mountain, all leading in the same direction. So it doesn't matter which path you take. The only one wasting time is the one who goes around and around the mountain, telling everyone else that his or her path is wrong. So let's not waste that time. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd just like to take a moment. I know Steve already expressed our gratitude for all of this, but I'd like to thank all of you again for lending me your small stories. We're really grateful. My story begins actually on a different continent. I was born and raised in Gambia, a small developing country along the coast of West Africa. Following my birth, my parents gave me the name Sheikh, adhering to the common Islamic tradition of giving one's child a Muslim name. Although I didn't understand why a name should serve to define an individual's faith, it came to serve as the catalyst for my first interfaith encounter. When I started elementary school in Gambia, I realized there were a number of Christian students who went by specific names reflective of their faiths. It was easy to look past our different beliefs as children, but we could see that the adults in our community thought themselves different